we are fast approaching the election in the United States between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and things have been interesting, for lack of a better term. In this video, we're going to be talking about what expats have been telling us about how they feel things are going in the United States right now, and it's all based on common sense and also their experience having lived in other countries. So if that's something that you're interested in, you want to see the difference between how other countries do elections or run their systems versus the United States, then this is going to be an episode that you really get to geek out on. And the goal is really just to have a thought-provoking conversation and honestly bring Americans together on some common issues, because I think we can all agree that things are an absolute mess in the United States right now, which is why so many of us have chosen to leave. So if you're interested in these kinds of topics, make sure to subscribe to Entrepreneur Expat, because on this channel, we talk about all things that affect American, Canadian, even Western European expats who are looking for better lives and opportunities in other countries. And also, the common denominator, no matter what country you're in, is you got to figure out how to make money. So if you are trying to figure out how to live in other countries, maybe you're looking at this election cycle right now and you're like, I got to get out of the United States, or maybe you're threatening to leave if your candidate doesn't win, we welcome you as well. Make sure to download our Make Money from Anywhere guide below, because that'll make the move a lot easier for you. So you might be wondering, hey, Amanda, you're riding solo today. I am. Justin's getting ready to teach our Get Your First High Paying Client Online Bootcamp. So I'm going to be doing this particular episode solo today, which, by the way, if you want more information on that bootcamp, the link is below. But really, we've been talking a lot about the election in the United States. And quite frankly, because we left the United States, we don't feel as attached to what goes on in the United States. But because we have the Entrepreneur Expat channel, and we feel like it's a service to this community, then we've had to kind of keep our tabs on what's going on politically. Quite frankly, if it wasn't for this channel, we probably wouldn't even be paying that much attention, because we've come to the conclusion that you can't rely on just one or two countries. You need to figure out a life where you can live among multiple countries, which is our goal. That being said, when you live in other countries and you've lived overseas for a while, you really start to notice some interesting things about how Americans do elections, how they run their food system, healthcare. I mean, there's so many things that are not okay in the United States right now. And unfortunately, because of the way that the system is set up, neither of these candidates is probably going to fix most of the things that we are going to be talking about in this video. So this is basically for your own education. And again, the things that we're going to be talking about in this video, we have seen should bring everybody together. If we look at our comments on Entrepreneur Expat right now, at least what's been shared with us publicly, right now it's looking like you guys are 50-50 between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And to be honest, that kind of surprised us, because we thought we were going to attract a bunch of libertarians and conservatives and Donald Trump people, because this is a channel about global citizenship. This is a channel about business. Those tend to be more conservative topics. So when we saw more liberal people coming to the channel, that kind of really surprised us. We were not expecting that. We ourselves are independents. We don't like any of these people. And we're living abroad and looking at the system and realizing, oh my gosh, there's some serious issues with the system, which is how we keep ending up in more and more dystopian elections. So in regards to this current election cycle and just the way the system in the US is currently set up, the more time you spend abroad and living in other countries, the more it makes sense why you have thousands and thousands upon more thousands of people now opting to leave the United States every year. And you have more and more Americans, and again, not just Americans, because we're seeing a lot of the same stuff from Canadians and Western Europeans and Australians and really all over the world, or at least all over the West in a lot of ways. You're seeing more Westerners become interested in global citizenship, which is what we're interested in. Now, it's not that other countries are perfect, because they are definitely not. There is absolutely no such thing as a perfect country, because every once in a while we'll have those comments coming in and be like, but Mexico has all these problems. Yes, it does. That's why we keep saying we're just starting in Mexico, because it was an easy path to residency. But our plan is to live in multiple countries throughout our life and make your lifestyle in a way where you're not stuck to one or two countries. Now, it's not something that you can do like this at the snap of a finger, because there's like immigration stuff that you have to deal with, but we're in that process. In addition to that, although there is no such thing as a perfect country, there are some things that are common sense. And when you start looking at the way things are being done in the United States right now with the political circus, the media, social media, a lot of the industries, I mean, there's just such a lack of common sense in comparison to what other countries have going on. And again, these common sense issues are things that should unite all Americans, no matter how you identify or which way that you would choose to vote. And by the way, if you want to debate us in the comments, go ahead. Just be respectful. But these are things that, you're going to hear some of these points and you're going to be like, wow, that's really liberal. And you're going to hear other points and you're going to be like, wow, that's really conservative. And the thing is that none of the things that I'm talking about in this video should even be that controversial. But because of the way that the United States is currently set up, it is controversial. And you have people at each other's throats over the most basic things that in other countries are just, like I said, common sense. So let's start going through this list. Number one, other countries have more than two parties that are a part of their political system, and they do their elections based on popular vote. Now, how they choose to deal with multiple parties basically depends on the country, and you can argue that some systems work and some others when you have multiple parties. But the point is that you're not locked into a two-party system like we are in the United States, which is one of the reasons why these elections keep becoming more and more dystopian, and you keep having to choose the lesser between two evils. Why do we have to keep choosing the lesser between two evils? Because we're locked in between Republican and Democrat. And to that point, Americans treat the political system like it's a freaking NFL game. It's like you choose your team and that's it. That's your team for freaking life. And Americans get very passionate about it, oddly so, in a lot of ways. And I'll give an example. There's a popular travel YouTuber. She has a relocation business and she dropped two videos. One video was countries to move to if Donald Trump wins, and another video was countries to move to if Kamala Harris wins. She's an expat. She left. She checked out. She doesn't care which of these two wins. She has a relocation business, and she has clients on all sides of the political spectrum who want to leave for different reasons. So she's just serving her audience basically, and it's the same thing we're seeing over here. People want to leave for different reasons. The point is she has a business where she helps them leave, so of course she's going to market that business. And the comments were crazy. They were nuts. People get very easily triggered over these things, and again, it's because we're locked into this two-party system that doesn't allow you to even be a little bit outside of the system. I mean, RFK tried to be outside of the system and they used lawfare against him. How many times have we seen more independent candidates trying to actually bring up some very valid points like RFK has, and then the system does everything humanly possible to make sure a third party doesn't get in there, which again is why we keep ending up in elections where we have to keep choosing. How many times have we seen the headline, this election has the two most unpopular candidates in history? How many times do we have to keep going through that? So that's number one, is other countries allow for more voices and more parties, and they go by popular vote. The Electoral College is another thing that's a major point of contention, as it should be. The argument for the Electoral College is if all the populations are on the coast, then you're just going to have a bunch of liberal people running the country, and then people in rural areas aren't going to have a choice. But here's the thing, the president and Congress are not your friend anyway, and when it comes to your local politics, that's your local government who needs to handle that stuff. So keep voting in the conservatives in the local government if that's something that concerns you. And the reason I say that the president and Congress are not your friends is because they keep showing us over and over and over again that they are not our friends. So let's keep going through this list. So number two, other countries, and we just saw this in Mexico, other countries publicly fund elections to avoid having corporations buying out their candidates. Now, in the United States, we have this thing called lobbying. In other countries, that's called corruption. and undue influence. And it's weird that we as individuals, maybe we can give, I think it's like $2,500 or $3,000, and we're capped in terms of how much money we can give to candidates. But PACs, super PACs, corporations, they can keep giving whatever money that they want. So remember how I said in the last point that the president and Congress are not your friends? They're not. They're not actually going to do the will of the people. They're going to do the will of their donors, which is exactly what we're seeing happen in the United States right now, and other countries, in an effort to avoid that, publicly fund their elections. You have your candidates. How someone becomes a candidate depends on the process. And then those candidates all get an equal amount of money from the government, and that's it. And the idea with publicly funded elections is that then you have an equal playing field, and then ideally candidates don't become corrupted like they're becoming corrupted in the United States right now. So remember how we said, hey, these people are not your friends? They're not doing your will. They're not doing the will of the people. They're doing the will of their donors, is what they're doing. Now, they will tell you publicly to get your vote that they're going to do your will and they're going to make all these changes, but we already know they don't do it. We already know like 4 years go by and then they don't do anything, and then Congress gets in a deadlock, and then they all blame each other as to why things aren't getting done, and then there's a threat of a shutdown. We already know how this goes. We've been seeing this forever. So they're not your friend because they're doing the will of the donors, not really the will of the people, which brings me to my next point, which is this whole idea of donating to candidates to begin with. Because one of the things I noticed in Mexico, because we went through an election cycle here, is we didn't see our friends getting a bunch of text messages hitting them up for money from the candidates. We didn't see that. We have Mexican numbers. We were getting hit up with a bunch of random text messages for a bunch of text and email lists that we never even signed up for to begin with, which, by the way, if you do that as a business owner in the United States, you're breaking the law. But if you do that as a politician in the United States, no big deal. You're allowed to break the law whenever you want. But they weren't getting hit up with a bunch of text messages for money for candidates. And that's the thing, is we're already paying taxes for these people to do their jobs. And if you're a U.S. citizen, you're going to get taxed on whatever money you make in whatever country you are in whatever way you make your money. You are getting taxed. So we're paying taxes for these people to do their jobs. They don't do their jobs, which they've already proven over and over and over again. Both parties have done this. They've all done this. And then in addition to that, now they're going to run for re-election to continue to not do their job. And then we got to give them more money? Make it make sense. Make it make sense. And then people get super into it. Like, yeah, I'm going to give money to this candidate so they win and they do my will, but they're not doing your will anyway. That's the whole problem here. So here's the other thing, and this has more to do with the food system. So here comes some common sense things. When you go back to the United States, after being abroad for a while, it is extremely obvious that there's crap in the food. You can taste it. The food either tastes like chemicals or it tastes like nothing. There's also this really weird thing that happens where you feel like you have to eat more food in order to feel satisfied. One of the things that we've noticed in Mexico, but it's not just Mexico because we've heard it from expats living all over the world, is that the food tastes like food. And they don't feel like they have to eat as much because there's just so much junk and garbage in the United States in the food system, which then leads to a ton of other problems. Now, I know somebody's going to hear this and they're going to say the same thing with healthcare. And they're going to say, well, a lot of the problems, we're a huge country. We're just such a big country and it makes for a big, complicated mess. I agree. A huge country makes for a big, complicated mess, which is part of what we're seeing in the United States right now, which is why you have some economists and some philosophers and some people interested in geopolitics now posing the theory that eventually the United States is going to get broken up into different countries because ideologically you're like on two different planets in a lot of cases, depending on where you are. Located in the country. Economically, you're on two different planets, just all across. And also, it's just too big to manage. So for those of you who are saying, oh, the United States is just too big, it's causing these many problems, we could never fix things like all these other countries have because of our sheer size, I agree. That's part of the problem. Here's the other thing. Other countries don't give a rat's ass which celebrity is endorsing which candidate. People lost their minds over Taylor Swift endorsing Kamala. Then there was a big thing over Beyonce endorsing Kamala. Then you have the Hulk over there with Donald Trump. Y'all, no one cares. In other countries, people do not care which celebrities are endorsing their candidates because it doesn't freaking matter which celebrities are endorsing candidates. This is just one of the weird things Americans do in their election cycle that other countries think is just weird for you to even care who Taylor Swift is voting for. I just laugh because it's like, it's so American. Okay. Next thing, right? And this might ruffle some feathers. But again, this is common sense. In most democratic countries all over the world, Mexico included, by the way, because again, we just saw an election cycle here and how that works, you need IDs in order to vote. You need proof of identification that you are who you say you are in order to be able to cast a ballot. In many countries, you don't even do the mail-in ballot thing. You have to go in person. Other things that are common sense. In other countries, election day is either on a weekend, like in Mexico, it was here on a Sunday, or it's a holiday. It's a national holiday, which makes all the sense in the world because in the United States, you have an argument over like, yeah, you don't need an ID to go vote. Well, how the hell do you know if somebody's a citizen or not? Like that would be like me as not a citizen of Mexico. I'm only a resident of Mexico right now, showing up to go vote in a Mexican election, but I'm not a citizen. What the hell? That doesn't even make sense. But in the United States, it's like a whole uproar over IDs, and Mexicans look at that and Mexicans are like, no, it's just common sense to ask for IDs. And I would never, as a resident of a country that I'm not a citizen of, even think I have the right to vote anyway. It just doesn't make any sense. Just make it make sense. And in the case of Mexico, Mexico has had a history of election fraud in its history. There's a whole thing with the PRI and PAN, all these people. They have a history of election fraud in Mexico, so they would like to avoid election fraud by asking for IDs and having people prove that they are who they say they are. But back to the point about other countries making election day either a national holiday or you go vote on a weekend, that's also just common sense. Whose idea was it to go vote on a Tuesday when people are working? You have to drive to get everywhere in the United States. You're shuffling your kids around from school to their extracurricular activities, and maybe they give you an extra lunch hour to go vote. Give me a break. Give me a break. Make it make sense. Now, I know they have early voting now and all those kinds of things, which of course helps in terms of people being more easily able to vote. But the idea of election day being in the middle of the week when we have so much going on, and then other countries make election day either national holidays or you go vote on a weekend to make it easy for people to be able to go vote. I mean, you just got to ask some questions there. You just make it make sense. Make it make sense. Healthcare, y'all. Healthcare. Healthcare in the United States is a mess. We all know it. We can all agree on it. That's why a lot of people go to Southeast Asia, or they go to Mexico, or they go to other countries to get healthcare done. And again, part of this, a lot of people will argue, okay, well, the United States is just too big of a country and it makes for a complicated mess with healthcare. Again, I agree. It's too big of a country. And that's why, again, some people are making the theory that maybe the United States will break up into different countries in the next few decades. Who knows? We'll have to see what happens. That'll definitely be interesting if it does happen. But healthcare is a mess in the United States. It's expensive. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Doctors don't even use their brains anymore because they can't, because they're afraid of being sued. So there's that problem. And what they'll tell you, right, a lot of times the argument is, well, every other first world country has figured out healthcare. Yes, it has, but it's not even a first world thing. Emerging countries have figured out healthcare. You don't even have to be first world to figure out affordable, accessible healthcare for people that's actually good. And when I said this on a Facebook post, a friend of mine said, you know what, don't even get me started on healthcare in the United States, because we have a family friend who was diagnosed with cancer in the United States. And in the United States, he was basically given a death sentence. I think he had about a year to live. And he just basically didn't accept that. And he went to Mexico. In Mexico, he got treated. He's been in remission for years. Yeah, because doctors in Mexico still use their brains. And a lot of you have commented below that you've had healthcare experiences in Mexico, and you've said it's some of the best experiences you've ever had. You felt really cared for. It was affordable. People actually care. You can WhatsApp your doctor 24/7. When was the last time you had your doctor's number in the United States and didn't have to fight with an insurance company over a claim? And again, they're not going to fix it. And they're not going to fix it because of the second point that I made, which is all these healthcare companies are paying for their campaigns. And neither candidate and neither party is going to fix that because they need that money in order to run. So what we're talking about is a whole system failure happening in the United States. And honestly, from the outside looking in, and a lot of expats have said this, and if you're a student of history, you have also said this, it's giving fall of Roman Empire. It's giving fall of Roman Empire vibes. It really is, with all the issues going on in the US right now. Okay, next thing, taxes. And this is a big difference between the United States and other countries. The United States taxes their citizens no matter how they make their money, where they made their money, or where they are in the world. So if you're a US citizen and you still have a job and you're an employee, and let's say you have a remote job and you go live in another country because your job is remote, you're still being taxed as if you are living in the United States. If you're a business owner, you can get away with tax breaks and things like that, which is go start a business, guys. Go be an entrepreneur. Go make your own economy. It's one of the benefits of it is you will get tax breaks if you are living abroad. But if if you are an employee of a company and you go live in another country, you're still paying taxes as if you live there. And not only that, let's say you start a business in Mexico or you start a business in any other country. Well, Uncle Sam's coming for his cut of that too, because the United States has what's called citizenship-based taxation. It is one of only 2 countries in the entire world that does it. The other country is a country in North Africa. It's a dictatorship. It does not have the resources to follow its citizens around all over the world. The United States does. And every other country in the world does residence-based taxation, which means that they tax you based on how much time you spend in their country, which makes a hell of a lot more sense. Again, common sense. Common sense. Okay, that's what we're trying to go for here. And then in terms of that citizenship-based taxation, a lot of people don't know this, but it makes your life as an expat a little bit more complicated because, for example, it becomes more complicated to go open up bank accounts in other countries. We have someone who emailed us recently that they're American and they have some money in Singapore, and they just got an email from their bank in Singapore saying that they were going to start limiting services to Americans because other countries don't want to deal with this mess. They don't want to deal with the administrative nightmare that comes from having US citizens as clients. And there's also a lot of other reasons why. It's because they don't need the US dollar anymore either. And there's lots of reasons for that, but this is not a conversation about that right now. So here's another difference between how other countries do things versus the United States. Other countries have much shorter election cycles. In Mexico, I think it was 6 months between, hey, we're candidates, and hey, we had an election. That's it, 6 months. Other countries, maybe it's like 8 months to a year. This whole 2-year craziness we have in the United States, I mean, first of all, it just induces extreme amounts of anxiety. Second of all, it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. Like, why? Why is this even necessary? And they'll say, oh, because of the primaries. Why don't all states go vote on the same day? If somebody has an actual answer to that, please let us know in the comments. Why don't all states just go vote in their primaries in the same day? Why is this whole giant, long, drawn-out thing that doesn't even make any damn sense to begin with? Because if you look at the Bernie versus Hillary situation a few years ago, I mean, all the delegates were going to go for Hillary anyway. So what was the point of having a primary? Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Because other countries do not do that. I think I was hearing about how France does elections recently, and you get your signatures as a candidate. Great, you have enough signatures, and then you run. And then France does oh man, I forgot how they called it. But basically they have 2 rounds of elections, and then the first round is all the parties, and then whoever's the winner of those rounds go to the second round. If there's a name for that kind of election process, I just can't remember what it is right now. But That would be an example of how to deal with multiple parties, have a much shorter election cycle, and not have to deal with this primary mess that we have in the United States as well. So that's another key difference, right? Is that elections are way shorter in other countries. The whole 2-year drama is just bonkers. Okay, now number 12, this is a difference between other countries and the US. By general rule, I'm not saying every country does this. By general rule, news from other countries is not as sensationalized or politicized as news in the United States. I'm not saying that they're not also used as tools of manipulation, because they definitely are, depending on the country. But in the United States, it's very unique. It's very unique in its sensationalism and literally politicizing every damn thing you can think of, even if there's nothing political about it. So there's a lot of that goes on in the US media. So by general rule, other countries are not as politicized or sensationalized in how they deliver news to the public. Again, not saying they're not used for manipulation, because that happens all over the world. I'm just saying it's not as politicized or sensationalized. Okay, here's another key difference, which goes back to the point on how none of these people are working for you. And in fact, right now, with the way things are set up in the United States, with the way your bills are looking and with the way your taxes are looking, you're working for the US government. They're not working for you. And we did a whole other video on the math on that. I'll make sure to leave it down below. But here's another example that in other parts of the world, this would be insane. Like, they would think you're crazy. So in other parts of the world, it's illegal for pharmaceutical companies to market directly to consumers or to sell directly to consumers. You don't go to your doctor in other countries and go ask them about a drug you saw on TV. That's illegal. In the United States, it's totally legal, and it's going to continue being legal so long as pharmaceutical companies keep paying for the campaigns of candidates. You see where we have a problem here? You see the big, giant underlying issue in all of this? In other countries, that's just crazy. It's just crazy that you would be able to go to your doctor and tell them about a prescription for your issue. Like, it just make it make sense. Okay, number 14. This one surprises a lot of Americans because Americans, and I'll talk about this later on, Americans just don't have context about what goes on in a lot of other countries. So ironically, Mexico currently has stricter immigration laws than the United States currently does. The reason I know that is because I just went through the immigration process here. Justin went through it about a year before I did, and our lawyers were giving us the lowdown on everything in terms of what's going on here. Mexico doesn't just let anybody stay in their country. Hell no. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't let just anybody stay in their country and use up limited resources because, again, that's common sense. And Americans would be very shocked to learn just how strict other countries are about immigration. If Americans knew, for example, because we're interested in eventually at some point in our lives spending time in Asia, if Americans knew how strict Asian countries were about immigration, their jaws would drop. But again, Americans have no context in terms of any of these things because unfortunately, Americans don't really know what goes on in other countries unless they go out looking for it or they go live in other countries or their job sends them to another country or you're just interested in this and you go look for it. But the average American has no friggin' idea. At number 15, right, none of what I said in this video is even that controversial. None of it. None of this is controversial. None of this should be controversial. But because of the way this system is currently set up in the United States, a lot of these very basic common sense things, you have Americans at each other's throats over the most basic of things that other countries have figured out. Like, think about this for a second. Everything I said on this list, whether you're conservative or liberal, you probably agree with it, but you're at each other's throats over the most basic stuff that other countries have already figured out how to do. And that's because of the way the system is currently set up in the United States, and the system is not even working for you right now. Like, let's be real about this. Look at the hurricane victims from Hurricane Helene. They're going to get $750 from FEMA if they could go online with their lack of electricity to go even sign up for the thing. Meanwhile, and then if they want more money, if FEMA needs more money, Congress needs to get together to go approve more money for FEMA. Meanwhile, if you're Israel or Ukraine or Lebanon or pick a country that the U.S. is using for a proxy war, that's a whole other thing, is how other countries don't get involved in this shit. But we don't have time for that one right now. Pick a country that the U.S. is using for a proxy war, they basically get blank checks. But if you're a U.S. citizen paying taxes, what are you getting? You keep getting more bullshit is what you keep getting, which again is why more and more Americans are interested in diversifying among different countries and taking what's good of the United States. And I'm going to talk about what's good in a second. But letting go of what's bad about the United States and realizing that there's other options out there. So the problem is, part of the problem, I would say, is that most Americans, like I said, sadly have no idea what goes on in other countries, so they don't have context. And because they don't have context, Americans think that I'm in the United States of America, this is as good as it's going to get. That's it, because we're the best in the world. Everybody's trying to come here. Not everybody's trying to go to the United States. Mexicans with money are not trying to go to the United States. Mexicans without money are trying to go to the United States, but Mexicans with money are not trying to go there. And you could see that in a lot of other countries as well. People with money are not necessarily clamoring for the U.S. unless they get a better tax deal in the United States than they would in their other country, or unless they're adding it to like a portfolio type of situation. But not everybody and their mom is trying to get to the United States at all, right? So because Americans don't have context about what goes on in other countries, and because Americans have been told their entire lives that the United States is the best in the world, then Americans think that this is as good as it's going to get for them. They think this is as good as it's going to get in the whole world. Right? And it's such a limited view, and it's not the fault of Americans. It's just what we're indoctrinated into ever since we're very young. Now, there are things about the United States that are incredible. For some things like technology and innovation, I mean, there's no denying that the United States, top contenders for technology and innovation in the world. There's absolutely no denying that. Zero argument there. In addition to that, the concept of America, meaning the philosophy, the idea, the way of thinking, right? What's in the Constitution, basically, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That was basically unheard of in the world. It's still unheard of in most of the world. So that concept where everybody's born equal, even though the United States does a terrible job at actually administering that, but whatever. But the idea that everybody's born equal under God, the idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the idea of a Bill of Rights, the American version is kind of unique in comparison to the rest of the world, and it should be admired. It's one of the amazing things about the United States. But the problem is that idealism, right, the American ideal, can't make any headway because the current system is failing all of us. And because of the way that system is set up, and I'm not here to tell you who to vote for, I'm just saying don't hold your breath that any of these people are actually going to fix it, because they're not. It wouldn't benefit them to fix it. So how we fix this, does it get fixed? How does it get fixed? We don't know. It's super messy right now. All we're saying is that we understand why people are saying, you know what, there might not be any fixing this, and I'm going to opt out, and I'm going to go find a better life elsewhere. So let me know if you agree with these things. If you've already lived in other countries, back me up in the comments, because we've been having a lot of conversations with you guys, and y'all are noticing the exact same things that I have mentioned in this video. And again, right, this shouldn't even really be like a massive topic of debate in the comments like some of our other videos. All of this is just common sense. And these are the conversations that Justin and I are having. These are the conversations that most expats are having. And this is the conversation that people who are considering leaving the United States, that they're having with themselves as well. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Prayers for those of you living in the United States during election day next week. Hope Hopefully it doesn't get too crazy. Prayers for everybody who is living there while this is going on. If you're interested in leaving the United States, you're like, I'm checking out, or F Donald Trump or F Kamala Harris, we really don't care, like we said, then make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can learn about other options and what it's like to live in other countries and have more of a global lifestyle instead of just being stuck to one country. And we'll catch you guys on the next one.